Okay, good evening, everybody. It's time is 6 o'clock, and welcome to a special session of the Newcastle City Council, a joint meeting with the City Council and the Planning Commission. Let the record show that all 7 City Council members are here and 6 of the 7 Planning Commission members. Okay. Director Fitzgibbons or City Manager Pingo, are you going to start us off with a presentation of some sort?
Good evening. Actually, I'm going to turn it right over to Chair Gatzik. But I think we're going to do some introductions to start. So Chair Gatzik, would you like to start introductions?
Sure. And I guess I'll start by introducing myself since that's the person who's got the mic. Well, I know many of you, but some of you don't know me. And so I have been on the Planning Commission since 2015. I retired from Puget Sound Energy last year, 2022. I was their manager of public safety, which meant that I was responsible for training firefighters how to respond to gas leaks, preventing contractors from digging into gas and electric lines, and getting as many ordinary people to know what gas smells like and what to do when they smell it. So, I have been interested in urban planning actually since college. At the University of Wisconsin, the original UW, I took a course in urban planning, and since then I've just been interested in it. So when the opportunity to join the Planning Commission came around a few years back, I jumped at it. Commissioners, who would like to go next? Well, here, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Kennard to go next.
Hi, Brian Kennard. I live on 116th, just south of the 2 schools that are up there. I think this is my 2nd term with the Planning Commission. I retired from, actually I had 2 companies that I worked for. One was REI, and I managed retail stores for REI for 13 years. Then I switched over and I did all of their store development work across the country, developing new retail sites. Then I switched from REI and moved over to Home Depot. And I was their real estate manager for all of Canada and northwestern United States. So I have quite a bit of experience sitting in the, standing up there as the applicant and requesting zone changes and conducting other business with planning commissions and city councils. And it was really interesting to me, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to give back in some fashion by joining the Planning Commission. So that's my story.
Okay, got it. Hi, my name is Maggie Lowe, and this is my 3rd year on the Planning Commission. I live in Newcastle since 2015. I moved to Newcastle from Queen Anne and want to have a place close to my work and as also has a great outdoor space. And I am a trained accountant, have MBA. I'm working with Boeing. Most of my career is in finance. So in my day job, I do a lot of long-range business plan, capital plan, risk assessment, etc. And during the pandemic, there's an opening in the Planning Commission, and I would like to contribute and give back and use some of my working knowledge and experience. So here I am, and this is the first time I'm working on the comp plan. So a lot of learning experience. Thank you.
Hi, Scott. Thank you. My name's Jim Quigg. My hair's cut, as everybody mentions. Every time they see me lately is, yes, I'm usually the Buddy the Elf around the city. I make people smile and laugh. That's what I like to do. So I volunteer. If I'm not Buddy the Elf, I'm Coach Jim. And I love helping out and all over throughout the community. And I just love Newcastle. We chose Newcastle because it just felt special and small. And And I just love the specialness of Newcastle. And so as much, I just came from a Brisbane Middle School basketball game and cheering my daughter on. And our HOA is very, very active. We're doing all sorts of events constantly and fundraisers. And I don't know why I volunteered for the Planning Commission, but I did. And I'm loving it. It's fun. It's harder than I thought it'd be. There's a lot of tough conversations we have and difficult choices. And now with the whole comp plan rewrite, it's very, very exciting and challenging. And so I'm looking forward to helping you all however we can to make sure that Newcastle is awesome. I just think Newcastle is a very special place, and I'm looking forward to helping you guys keep it that way.
I'm Scott Marsh. I have lived in Newcastle since 2005, and I've been on the Planning Commission since, what did we say, 2019? 2019. I love Newcastle too, and raised my family here. And as my kids I have twin daughters, and when they got to be later into high school, I realized that there was space in my life to volunteer and be involved and do something for the community. And professionally, I'm a real estate attorney, so the Planning Commission just seemed like a great opportunity for me to leverage some of my professional experience in a way that I thought could be useful for the city. So, I agree with everything Jim said about the tough choices and the challenges, and it's exciting. We get to collaborate a lot on some pretty important issues for the city, and I'm glad I get to be a part of it. So thanks.
Hello, good evening. Paul Venata. I've been on the Planning Commission since 2019, so going on 5 years this year. My wife and I moved here in 2015. We used to live over in the Green Lake area of Seattle. And kind of, I guess, what other people are saying, what I loved about it is when you were in Seattle, it seemed very hard to get involved with city government. You get over here and it's like, oh, you can volunteer and help out, which we really like. And professionally, I work for Kaiser Permanente as an IT manager. I've been there. I used to be at Group Health, and then they sold to Kaiser, so I've been there going on like 23 years, I think it is. So, long time.
Hi, I'm Amy Dantzler. I've been on the Planning Commission for about 1.5 years. My husband and I moved to Newcastle almost 20 years ago in 2004, and we live in the Hazelwood community. Let's see, when the opening came up on the Planning Commission 1.5 years ago, I applied to participate. I had been a volunteer in the Renton School District at my daughter's school, Hazelwood and Brisbane. And I also thought I could leverage my professional experience in this role coming up in the Planning Commission because of the comprehensive plan and the timing of that. I work for Mercer, which is a large consulting firm in the healthcare brokerage and consulting area, and have day-to-day experience with complex regulatory environments, understanding, federal and state law and how that applies to, healthcare for large employers. And then also very technical, in a technical environment. So I thought, this is a complex plan that we're working on, a comprehensive plan, and understanding state law and the things going on in our region and how that affects Newcastle. I thought I could bring that sort of consultant view of just going through a lot of information and bubbling it up for people who just need to know the main things. I think that's it.
Thank you all. And introductions were a good idea, Aaron. Thank you. So really quickly, we'll go right around the council and just say a minute or so, just give a brief update so that Planning Commission members know our own backgrounds, how we can collaborate. Okay? Go ahead, Paul.
Hello, Paul Charbonneau. I lived in Newcastle since 1997 without consent when I was brought home from the hospital. I've just been served on council for 2 years now in the Olympus area. Just a big public policy nerd. Was student president of my college. Got to study as an undergraduate public policy fellow at the University of Michigan, which was a really great experience. And I've since come back and served on the public policy committee of the National Alliance on Mental Illness for the state of Washington. And then I'm going to dive into regional committees like regional transit, mental illness drug dependency, and several others. So happy to be here and get into the weeds of the Planning Commission work plan.
Hello, I'm Steve Tallman. I've lived in Newcastle since 1996 in the Olympus area. My background is in consumer packaged goods. I've always worked for the larger consumer products companies like Campbell Soup Company, Ocean Spray, Montalo Macadamias, and my last gig was managing all of the Hershey Company's Costco business globally. So I managed a sales team, worked closely with legal, operations, supply chain, and customer service. I felt like I've always been active in the community, very active in Olympus, especially with my neighbors. I feel like I can make a contribution to the city with my business background and just being very close to this community. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pratima Lakhotia. Lived in Newcastle for over 9 years now. Been in the council for 2 years. And my background is MBA finance. I have a finance as well as pricing strategy, marketing, working for Fortune 500 like T-Mobile, Microsoft. And I also run a nonprofit currently. And yeah, I've been trying to leverage my skills in the council. Thank you.
I'm Rob Clark. I've been in Newcastle resident since 2006. An interesting story is I lived in West Seattle and my wife-to-be lived in Bothell, and we needed someplace in the middle. So a friend found a house for us that we're in now, actually over here in Hazelwood. So that's how we ended up in Newcastle. But of course, we love it here. That's why we're still here. And my background is engineering. I'm an electrical engineer. This year is 25 years at the steel mill. So I have a lot of engineering and leadership background. However, if that can be of use to the planning council or the city, of course, I want to use that. So thank you all for being here.
Good evening. I'm Tom Griffin. This is my second term on the council. I've been living in Hazelwood for 45 years, so that's a while before Newcastle became Newcastle. And I'm a CPA by background, worked in private and public accounting for years and years, and still working as a tax practitioner. And I enjoyed on the council.
Hi everyone, nice to see your faces. I'm Ariana Sherlock. I just got reelected for a second term, so I've been on the council for 4 years now and really enjoying it. My background is, well, I moved to the city in 2013 and raising my family here with my husband, and we felt like we just fell into a wonderful place to live. And I got involved in the community pretty quickly. I was home with the kids and got involved with my neighborhood association and then the schools, and then started coming to council meetings and caught the government bug. And really, and like everyone said, it's so accessible here because it's so small and local. So really enjoyed being involved, and I'm really excited to continue working with all of you. So thank you for being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam Burford. I'm your newly elected council member. I have lived in Newcastle since 2012 with my family, my husband and my 2 daughters. And my professional background, I'm an educator and teacher trainer, mentor, and national project inspector and evaluator. And I'm a community person at work. I've been working, serve on leadership committee and ATP, which is like action team for partnership and also collaboration and just community engagement. And I truly, it's my honor to work with all the residents and through Lunar New Year and working for Arts Council and the Newcastle Friends of Newcastle Library. I just want to work for you all, and also welcome to our Planning Commission, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Charlie, do you have a presentation for us?
So it might be a little much to call it a presentation. I wanted to walk you through the work plan in case you had any questions, and I wanted to say a little bit about the comprehensive plan, sort of to try to show the forest despite the trees and where we are in the process. So the work plan has got a number of things on it, and some of them have to do with the comprehensive plan, some do not. The ones that do not have to do with the comprehensive plan are primarily an update of our macro wireless ordinance. So that's just all the rules that govern wireless transmissions, the big towers. And we have a ordinance that's been on the books for many years. Laws have changed around us, and the ordinance has to be brought up to date, so it is a matter of bringing that up to date. Another item that is not part of the comprehensive plan is a community design conversation. So let's see if we can, I'm going to jump around, not going to follow any order here, but let me just show you a picture of what I mean by community design. Okay, so our downtown plan has in it several requirements for that affect design, the look of the downtown. And they include some things like accent colors, and they talk about materials, and they talk about requirements for where public spaces have to be. A lot of things that really impact the design. But what it doesn't do is try to achieve a certain look. And these two pictures sort of are instrumental in just showing two possible looks that are now possible under our current rules. That's Newcastle Commons, and because it was built in a brickyard, the development agreement for that, which preceded my involvement with the city, called for bricks. It called for a brick look to honor the heritage of that site. Outside of the Newcastle Commons, the design standards don't call for that, and the water line development there is an example of what that looks like. So the planning commissioners, there was some sentiment on the planning commissioners that that waterline building was not very pretty. And it raised the question, are our design standards adequate? So our work plan just calls to have a conversation to look at our design standards and say, are we happy with them? If not, what should we think about doing differently? So it's just a conversation. I wouldn't want to say there's any sentiment to go to any particular direction. You know, we don't want to be Leavenworth or, something. We don't necessarily want to have a certain design, but we're going to have a conversation about that. We'll have our annual housekeeping amendment. That's always on the work plan. But the other things have to do with the comprehensive plan. And I'll just tick those off, and then I'll talk about the comprehensive plan generally. So we'll be talking about the housing ordinance and ADUs, all right, what's that acronym? ADUs is, what is that? Accessory dwelling units, thank you. We'll be talking about an update to our SEPA code, that's the State Environmental Policy Act, talking about critical areas. This is another thing. Critical areas environmentally is what I mean by that. And the state requires us to look at those as part of the comprehensive plan update. We'll be looking at concurrency standards, again, required as part of the comprehensive plan update. So those are all sort of things that, because we're doing the comprehensive plan, we are going to be looking at those in some more detail. The comprehensive plan in general is a 2-year process. Those of you who have been on the council, and I think some of you who just joined, because I've seen you at public events, know something about this already. We started last year. Much of last year was taken up by listening. The commission members went to many public events and just tried to engage in conversations about what's on people's minds about the future of Newcastle. We had one event at Risdon Middle School, where we tried to focus that just on comprehensive plan issues. We spent time last year educating ourselves about the comprehensive plan, really diving into it. And as you all know, when you join the council, it's a learning by doing experience. Same thing with the planning commission. So we jumped into the comprehensive plan and studied it in detail so we could be more effective commissioners about it. This coming year, or this year I should say, is now where we move from listening to acting and to developing recommendations for changes. Those recommendations will be based on our own reading of the situation, our own sense of what the city, how the city might be changing and what, if anything, needs to change about the comprehensive plan. They'll also be based on what we hear from what we've already heard and what we are going to hear from the results of the survey that is now in the field. That survey, we took a lot of time putting that together because we wanted it to come back with data that we can really use, that you can really use when you have some decisions that are facing you. And a couple of things in particular that I think the survey will give us data that will help us all respond in a way that will satisfy what Newcastle residents want. The first one of those issues is going to be rather immediate, and that's with housing. The state changed the law last year to require more density in single-family neighborhoods. And there's a certain amount of density, namely ADUs and duplexes, that every city of our size is required to do. But there are some other options that we could we could promote them, make them more available in single-family neighborhoods if we chose. So part of one of the key survey questions is asking people what their preferences are for that type of housing in single-family neighborhoods. The other item is not quite so pressing. I say pressing, let me back up one step. Newcastle will have to change its housing, its zoning ordinances to comply with that law, and it'll have to do that by the middle of 2025. So that's why when I say more immediate, that'll be an issue that'll be coming before you in terms of proposed ordinances that need to be done in the first half of next year. But the other issue has to do with how do we cope with the growth that we're expected to plan for over the next 20 years. Again, through the Growth Management Act, where the plan calls for us to plan for another roughly 1,500 residents in the city. And where are those going to go? Well, they could go downtown, they could go in the neighborhoods, but the downtown is one place where, if it were redeveloped, could absorb a lot of that. We have a downtown plan that was originally created back, I think, around 2000, and then it was substantially revised in 2017 to lower the height limits and the density that were permitted. So it took a step back from density in 2017. Since 2017, we have experienced a lot of growth with Newcastle Commons, which not only brought in another 2,000 residents, but it also gave Newcastle residents firsthand experience with mixed use development, which is not something we had back when we did the downtown plan and revised it in 2017. So the survey, what we're trying to do is say, where is the city now on this question of how to use the downtown? Because we're going to want to know that as we cope with planning for another 1,500 residents over the next 20 years. All right, I'm going to take a breath here and see if there's anything that I have left out here. So the survey, a big part of what we will use as we make recommendations for changes to the comprehensive plan. We don't yet know what direction that's going to go. I'd say we are now poised to start making those recommendations. When we do, there's going to be two really key junctures where the public will be involved again. One of those will be probably in late spring. We, meaning the commission, the consultants, the city planning staff, will present the community with some scenarios of how growth could be accommodated and what the implications of each of those scenarios, let's say there's three of them, three different scenarios, and what the implications would be on infrastructure. We would present those in some kind of a public forum, probably a lot like the Risden School one, where we try to get as many people there to see and then weigh in on those different alternatives. The second major part of where there's going to be some significant public involvement is when we actually have a recommended plan, or I should say a draft plan, not yet recommended, but a draft plan that we can then present to the public and give them a chance to react to it. This is all before it ever comes to you, but you'll be able to see how this is developing as it happens. So when it comes to you, there shouldn't be any surprises, and hopefully, as it comes to you, we'll be aware of how you feel about certain of these things, so we can take that into consideration. The goal is to have something, have a recommendation to you in probably the late fall, and give you probably a couple of meetings at least to absorb it and put your stamp on it if there's something that you want to see be different, to give you enough time to do that. Our goal is to have something approved by the end of 2024. There is a legislative requirement to have something done. If we don't get it done by then, it can be done later, but there are some disadvantages, like we might not be eligible for certain grants, for example, if we don't have that plan done by the end of 2024. But hopefully we won't be in that position because we'll have moved this along at a good clip and given you plenty of time to consider it. Let me, I guess, first offer commissioners an opportunity to comment on anything that you think is important that I've missed.
There we go. Okay. Charlie's not exaggerating when he says we spent a lot of time on that survey. The survey went through approximately 1,800 versions, I feel like, back and forth and back and forth, and I was loud about the first version. Anybody that watched the recordings, because, quick recap, I thought it'd be kind of a gradual process, plenty of time. It turned into we need to make a decision quickly, and I just hooted and hollered. So it's gone through quite a few versions from when the original proposal came to what it is today now. So it's an opportunity for our residents to comment on the future of this city. There's a major law affecting the character of the city and how we're going to develop and accommodate new residences. And I'm very interested to see what the citizens want, because I think that's what should drive our decisions. I think that we should get that survey in the hands of as many residents as possible, so that it's not just 7 people who may or may not know everything about this issue and may or may not have a perspective that reflects that of their neighbors, but it reflects the views of the people in all different neighborhoods, whether you're in these condos, whether you're out back in Windtree, whether you're up in China Creek, wherever you're at. I just feel like we should push that survey out as much as possible because we put a hell of a lot of time into it. And as Charlie said, it asked some critical questions. So I just wanted to drive that home, that even though there are going to be steps later on, to kind of revise and put stamps on it, as he said, I really think the key component is that survey. So as much as you all can talk to your neighbors and can encourage them to take it, I think we'd appreciate it. Thank you, Charlie.
Council members, do you have any questions for any of us?
Anybody have a question? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I did receive the mailer for the survey. How many mailers did we send out?
A card went to every address in the city. So every residence, every apartment, I think every business, if I'm not mistaken, was given this card, given notice of that, and invited to respond. The responses we're hoping will come digitally, but if the card went to a household where somebody doesn't have a computer, then we ask them to call the city and request a paper survey, and then we would mail it to them so that they, would have their opportunity to participate. And I just checked today, we have about 280 responses so far. We think if we get about 500, that'll be a good showing, and anything we get over 500 will be really nice.
the state line of duplexes, and it means when you mention that there is also option, what is the other option?
The state law requires us to not put any obstacles in, well, let me put it this way, to treat duplexes and ADUs equally as single-family homes. So if a family home can be built on a certain footprint, then a duplex that fits that same footprint can also be built. The city can't put any barriers in the way of that. But a triplex or a fourplex or cottage housing or townhomes, those are other things that could be allowed in single-family neighborhoods. But Newcastle isn't required to do that. If Newcastle wanted to do that, they could.
The 20 years, when does the clock start, or has it started? You know, like you have to increase the number of residents by 1,500 in the next 20 years, is it?
Yeah, by 2044.
Anybody else have questions?
Thank you. Are we going over in, is there more to the presentation in terms of the wireless ordinances, or should I ask questions about that now as well?
There's no more to the presentations. If you have questions, Aaron might be in a better position than I to answer them.
I was just curious. So I have questions about others as well. I think it's important to, make sure we're not, I guess, inviting response bias when we're talking about housing. I think that a lot of the language I see here is about doing what's mandated as opposed to what can we do, right? Philosophically, I don't think we should be slamming the door for more people to come in here once we move here. I guess I'm curious, are we going to, if we allow accessory dwelling units, are we making the permitting process for that easier? I'd be more interested in not just allowing them, but actually making it easier to go through the process, because I think it can be kind of confusing and onerous for folks that are not currently doing it or don't understand how city government works, which is most people. 2, are we allowing another fun acronym, DADUs, detached accessory dwelling units? And then I'd like to, I guess I'd like to hear more about the housing ordinances, the housing ordinance. I think for me, knowing that, I think when looking at duplexes, often is a boogeyman when 99% of people that have them in their neighborhood don't know it's a duplex unless you literally tell them it's a duplex. I'll remind folks too, I think a really good example of an accessory dwelling unit is I'm the youngest of 3 boys. My parents buy a house that can accommodate three large boys. I go off to college. They have a large house that they're not able to sort of fill anymore, right? With just the 2 of them, that's already sort of naturally split in different sections. That's an opportunity for an ADU, right? I have friends who have gone and graduated through the schools here and come back to work in these communities at Newport High School, at nearby places, at some of the local businesses. Those are all opportunities for ADUs. So it's not, I don't think, a scary thing personally, and I cannot reiterate that enough. But I'd love to hear about the couple questions I had, if Aaron, you'd be.
So the first question about permitting, correct, and what we're going to allow. So the state, it's House Bill 1337 that was passed last year, and the state is requiring jurisdictions which meet certain criteria, which we do, to allow an attached and detached per property. How that ties in with the housing bill is still under review, but the housing bill is the missing middle housing bill, and that has to do with allowing 2 units on a property, most likely through a duplex type situation, but that could look different in different ways. In both cases, it has to be a very ministerial review, and it has to be treated just like a single family building permit for review. So if someone's applying for an ADU or attached or detached, then we just look at it like a building permit. We currently do allow them, but it does also take away some of the requirements for the property owner or a family member of the property owner to live on site as well.
Yeah, I guess my feedback then for planning commission is I'd love to see something that makes the ADU process, the application process, as minimal, as least onerous as we could make it. I think we should remove the barriers there. Thank you.
I have a question regarding Bill 1337. So it's my understanding that there are certain protections within the community and within the neighborhoods and HOAs where if they're already established, calling for single-family homes, that they can block ADUs. Is that correct?
It's like playing ping pong. If your CCNRs already or already restrict ADUs, then those are legal and they stay. Those cannot be revoked. But if you don't already block ADUs through your CCNRs, then the law takes precedence.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody from up here? Oh, I have a couple then, if nobody else does. So in your committee discussions and so far as, you know, the work that you've done, have you identified, like, is there some significant issue that stands out to you so far in the community? Like something that we might be looking forward to change or needing to change? If that makes sense.
I don't think we can answer that as a commission, but I think as individual commissioners, I'll invite those who have an opinion to answer. For me in particular, I didn't see anything that really stood out. I think the things that will stand out will be the single-family neighborhood thing. When people really are faced with that, that will stand out. But right now, the things that stand out are things that are no surprise to us. It's the traffic on Coal Creek Parkway. It's the perception that crime is increasing, which is not necessarily a comprehensive plan thing that comprehensive plan addresses. Those two definitely I've heard now, and imagine others have heard. Commissioners, do you want to add to that?
So I'm going to take a little bit different approach to your question, if I may, and just I think that the housing issue has been and will be an interesting conversation. And I think in terms of interesting conversations around that during these events over the last year, thinking about things like, what does not just doing what's the minimum required by the state law, what's that going to look like, but really what makes sense for our community from a holistic development standpoint. And having discussions with citizens about things, not just like, hey, how do you feel about having a duplex or a triplex next door, but also things like, if we're faced with this requirement that we accommodate a certain level of growth over the next 20 years, how do we think about where people are going to live? How do we think about things like parking? And then how do we think about things like proximity to transit, so that if people are living in more dense living situations, they may not have cars, right? If people are living in apartments or smaller units, they may be workforce housing units that require that people be able to commute using transit, things like that. So it's not just the housing discussion, but it's been really interesting talking with the citizens of Newcastle about what are the other levers that end up getting pulled as part of this. And I think figuring out not just a housing piece or what is downtown going to look like, but how do all those other pieces support the vision that people bring to the table? I think that's where it's going to be really interesting and frankly a lot of work.
I think it's really important as we develop this plan that we make it really clear to the citizens what's mandated by law, and then what the opportunities are to work with that law to do what is right for the community, regardless of what direction that goes. But I would like to see and maybe I just need to spend more time looking at the plan and you know, meeting with you and understanding exactly what the mandates are, and then how we're responding as a community and where we need to go, where we can go, and where we should go. But I think some of those more particulars in terms of what is actually being mandated by the state is really important for us to understand, so that the people feel like they can make a decision and help form their community, as opposed to being just pushed into it.
My other question was, prior to building up the commons, we had a certain target for accommodating growth by 2040, whatever the number was. I was under the impression, obviously perhaps mistaken, that we got so many people in the commons that we kind of took care of that growth number for quite some time in the future, but I'm hearing that we're still have more growth that we have to accommodate. Obviously, I have a mistaken view of that. Is there some merit to what I'm saying, or how did that work?
So along with our comprehensive plan updates, we have King County's countywide planning policies. And under the countywide, what they do is they look at the anticipated growth and then they allocate growth. So every time we do a comp plan update, we're going to be looking at new numbers. We can't force people to move here, but we have to plan for it.
Okay, I don't see any more questions up here. Is any more comments from any of the members, panel members? No? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation and your update. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate all the work that all of you do. I had a chance to sit in on a meeting in December while you were discussing the survey, one of the iterations of the survey. And I know you guys do seriously a lot more work than we do often, right? You guys do spend a lot of time, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. So with that, we will adjourn until 7 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting. The date is January 16th and the time is 7 o'clock. This meeting is being recorded and being also broadcast live on our Newcastle YouTube channel. My name is Mayor Clark, and please rise and join me in the flag salute. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Burford.
Here.
Councilmember Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Tallman.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau. Deputy Mayor Lakotia. And Mayor Clark. All here, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Appreciate it. Tonight's agenda, are there any objections or desires to change tonight's agenda? Seeing none, please show the agenda approved. We move on to public comment. Public comment is a 3-minute period where you may come and speak about any issue you'd like. Doesn't have to be on our agenda. If there are any members of the public that would like to speak, please state your name and neighborhood, and then we will do any audience members and anybody online after that. City Clerk, are there anybody signed up? Nobody signed up. Director Bronze, do we have anybody online who would like to speak? No. Okay, public comment is closed. We have no ceremonial presentations tonight, so we'll move on to council comment. We'll start with Councilmember Tallman.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin. Councilmember Sherlock.
No comment.
Councilmember Burford.
No comment.
Oh. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you, everyone else, for making me look bad by having a comment. I just wanted to plug really quick. I'm helping organize this weekend the 11th annual Taking Down Pancreatic Cancer event happening at Hazen High School. This Saturday, January 20th at 8 a.m. Doors will open. It's a big charity event we sponsor with the Pancreatic Action Network. We've been doing it 11 years. I was able to participate in it both as a high schooler and now help organize it as a coach. The head coach of Hazen High School, Rory Magana, who's been there over 15 years now, his father passed away from pancreatic cancer, and it is the most deadly form of cancer you can get. So great strides have been made. It's a great event. There will be auction baskets, great wrestling, if that's your thing, which is probably only my thing, but it's a great event to attend, and I hope folks will consider coming on Saturday for the greater Newcastle community.
Deputy Mayor Lakotia.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to reports. I'll have a few comments here. Mayor's comments. So each council member, in front of you, you have a letter. It was in the package from the city manager on Friday as well. And this is a preliminary draft. It's been reviewed. I created it. The city manager and Amy George both had a chance to read through this. The purpose of this letter, and one of the things for the audience, what I'm talking about is a letter, we're considering drafting and sending a letter to all members of the public. And the reason for this is we lack full participation by our community. You know, since the demise of our city newspaper a number of years ago, there hasn't been one certain way to reach all our members of our public. So members of the public, if they want to be informed, they sign up on the city, they sign up to get the newsletter electronically, and then they get it that way. But that's a limited number of people. I don't know how many people are signed up, but it's a fraction of our total population. So I would like a way to remind people to sign up to this online newsletter. Lacking another way at this present time, my idea, or I thought, was that we would send a letter mailed to every address in Newcastle and offer them options to sign up. They don't have to, we're not going to require it, but that we could gain more participation and more community involvement. So I drafted a 2-page letter, and I'd like each council member, if you haven't had a chance to look at it already, to just kind of review it, make some comments, email me some comments. We don't have to discuss it right now. We would like to get this out by the end of the month so that we can notify people about the public safety meeting that we intend to have on February 20th. So, so at this point, just please review the letter, offer your comments, reply to me by email, caption the city manager. We'll have some discussion online about it, and I want to hear your thoughts. So it's been gone through a few times. It doesn't mean it can't be improved. And I'm open, totally open to other ways of contacting the community as well. I mean, this isn't just, I don't want to do it because I said it, right? But I do want to get more involvement from the public, and I feel this is one way to do it. So that's that about the letter. And that was all I had for comments tonight. So moving on to council committees, since and I would ask the city clerk to, in the meeting minutes, to please list the names of the people that I assigned to the committees. I forgot to have you do that for the agenda. My apologies. So we have settled on council committees, and we'll have that information put out to the public shortly. But as far as the new committees, is there any committee that has met in the last 2 weeks that would like, no council committees? Okay. How about any regional, excuse me, Councilmember Tallman?
So Transportation Committee?
Okay, that's a regional committee. Okay, go ahead, regional committees.
Okay, so on Friday, I attended the East Side Transportation Partnership meeting, which they meet every month on the second Friday at 8 a.m. They have an annual meeting, in-person meeting in September, where they provide space for public comment and they encourage the public to participate. They're trying to open up a second in-person meeting, hopefully in March or April, so we can get more participation from the communities. This group ranges from up north Woodinville all the way down to Newcastle, out to North Bend, up to Duval. And there was about 40 people who attended. There was a couple of focus items that I just wanted to bring up that might be of particular interest to people in the Newcastle area. One regarding the 405-167 corridor. They're working on adding the express toll lanes, which will operate very similar to the lanes north of Bellevue up to Linwood, which basically adds one line each way. And they're expecting that to open up sometime this fall. The other item of interest was East Sound Transit. So they call it the Starter Light Rail. It's the light rail activity that you've seen in the Bellevue and Seattle areas. The two lines will be opening between South Bellevue, which is by I-90, all the way to the Redmond Technology Station. There'll be 8 stations open, and that'll be operating later on this fall. And just for people looking for employment right now, there's 82% of the 180 positions already filled, but it looks like they're still hiring. Eventually, those lines will connect across I-90, but those are my updates for now.
Thank you. Any other regional committees? Okay. City manager report. City manager?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Not too much. I just wanted to kind of add on to Mayor Clark's comments on the letter. And Mayor Clark can correct me if I'm wrong, we really think it would be great if that letter can go out to the community from the council as a whole. So that's why we want everybody's feedback. If there's something in it that you just can't get on board with or anything like that, please let us know so that we can try to make adjustments so that the letter can be acceptable to the whole council. That would be great.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Moving on to the consent agenda. Any objections to the consent agenda? Seeing none, please show the consent agenda approved unanimously. Okay, we have no public hearings this evening, and we have no unfinished business. So we will move on to our general business. Item 12.1, adoption of the resolution for the Arch budget plan and work plan, excuse me. So, City Manager, who's going to lead that discussion?
I'll invite Lindsay Masters from City of Bellevue, but she's the Arch Executive Director, up to the podium. And I'll have her introduce herself a little bit more.
How about now? Great. Thanks for having me here tonight. Thank you, Scott, for the kind introduction. So I'm here to cover a couple of different topics that are before you. One is the annual approval of our budget and work program. This is for the year 2024. I'll be giving just a really brief overview of Arch as an organization for some of the newer council members. The particular priorities within our work program that were selected for this year, and then a quick recap of the proposed budget. Then I will be covering a separate item, which is approval of our annual trust fund recommendations, and I'll walk you a little bit through how that program works and how your contributions help to fund affordable housing. So just briefly, as a whole, Arch is an organization formed through interlocal agreement amongst many different jurisdictions in East King County. We've been around for a little over 30 years now. We bring cities together to help through sort of cooperative efforts to create and preserve affordable housing, both through support on the policy and planning on the front end to enable the conditions for affordable housing to be developed. We also help to facilitate investment of local dollars and attracting other resources to help invest in those projects. We then help to administer sort of local programs. When you have policies and programs that are set up at the local level, we provide sort of a centralized vehicle for cities to share in that administrative cost. And then we also provide information for the public, that particularly folks wanting to know what affordable housing is out there in the community and how to apply for it. Just at a high level snapshot, we have collectively over the life of Arch's existence been able to invest in over 6,000 affordable units. These have been well distributed throughout our member jurisdictions, all the way up to Kenmore, Bothell, Woodinville, and down to Newcastle and Issaquah. We've also helped many of our members, including Newcastle, to set up local incentive programs for developers building private market rate affordable housing to include some affordability in those. And that's accomplished over 2,700 affordable units in 191 developments, with lots more in the pipeline coming underway. In 2024, which is already kicked off, I'll just wanted to highlight briefly some of the priorities that the board, the Arch Executive Board identified for our work program. One is we are hoping to wrap up a strategic planning process that was started last year and be able to share some recommendations coming out of that that would again be implemented through our annual budget and work program process. We've also been working for the last couple years to support cities in their comprehensive plan updates, providing some housing data and analysis, working to help staff who are also implementing new state mandates for your local planning. We've, in addition, been working with particular cities that have unique opportunities to site affordable housing near transit. Some of the new light rail stations coming online and public property adjacent to that. We also took on a kind of challenging policy this year around how rents are increased within affordable housing, so how those rents get set and then increased each year. We've been able to share some recommendations and then would be assisting members to decide whether to consider those. And then we continue to be interested in opportunities at the legislature to identify potential shared priorities among our members when you're going to advocate and figure out if there are specific policy opportunities for you to help in your efforts at the local level on affordable housing. And then finally, something that's been a long sort of priority since we developed this approach to sort of picking out things out of our work program to prioritize has been the stewardship of all the affordable housing created through those efforts that we just talked about. So we have staff that provide ongoing monitoring, both for our homeownership program and our rental program. This year's budget, we have proposed to maintain current staffing levels, so no increase to our program staffing or services, but we did have an additional request from City of Bellevue, which hosts Arch as an administering agency, to provide some additional funding for legal services. All told, the City of Newcastle's contribution would be about $40,000 for our budget this year, which is about 1.8% of our total budget. I believe that's it for item 1. I don't know, Scott, if you'd like me to pause and take any questions on the budget or finish the whole presentation.
I'd say go ahead and continue on and finish your presentation, please. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So shifting gears to talk specifically about the trust fund, which is a really important part of Arch's work program. This has been around since Arch was first created. It was a way for all the different member cities within Arch to help put funds together into shared investments in affordable housing. It's a pretty unique program. There aren't many like it, both in the fact that the funds are flexible and can go to support many different diverse types of projects, whether they're larger projects or smaller group homes, serving a whole range of populations. We've been able to preserve existing housing, help construct new housing. So it's a pretty wonderful program. You can see in this slide, we've invested somewhere over $90 million in local resources. That includes not just funding contributions, but also donations of land, fee waivers that cities have been able to offer for affordable housing. We've, again, touched many different types of populations. We have some goals around that you can see that we track over time. I wanted to have one slide on process because I know it can be confusing that we come sort of sometimes multiple times a year. We're asking for 2 different kinds of approval. So I'm breaking down for you here in this slide how the trust fund works. Each year when you're developing your city budget, you make a determination whether and how much funding you'd like to put into the trust fund. We collect all that information from all our members roughly in the first quarter of the year and pull that money together into a fund that City of Bellevue holds on your behalf. The following rest of the year, we're soliciting proposals and advertising that funding availability out to developers. And we review their applications and have an evaluation process that's led by a community advisory board. So we have volunteers from the community that live or work within East King County with specialized background and expertise to help develop these funding recommendations that then ultimately come to you. Those are approved first by our executive board in December, and then we spend the first half of the next year coming back to you to tell you about the projects that were recommended and asking for the approval to enter into the contracts to award those funds. So you've already sort of appropriated the funds in the first year, but before we move forward and actually contract, we have a step where we come back to you and let you know about those recommendations and ask for your approval. And again, City of Bellevue then is our legal administering entity that helps us actually enter into those contracts on your behalf. I'll just cover this year's funding round at a high level. We did have about $4 million available at the start of that process. So when we went around and identified the contributions cities wanted to make for the year, and I apologize that there's a number about Bellevue in there. That's a recycled slide. But in addition to the $4 million, we were also able to work with the City of Redmond this year to come up with another roughly $2 million to help bridge the gap on some projects that city wanted to see move forward in Redmond. The chart on the right, the pie chart, shows you sort of all the contributions that make up the whole this fall from the last fall round. And so it's a point being that you may be small contributions that come from a number of smaller jurisdictions, but they are all important in making up that whole. We've been fortunate to have cities be able to take advantage of a sales tax credit in recent years called the 1406 sales tax funds. It's a small but important revenue source that's dedicated to affordable housing and that sort of comes to you at no cost from the state. We are also able to generate funds from projects that are able to repay their loans, so we help to replenish the program over time. That's been another way we've been able to boost our investments. This year we had 7 applications requesting around $12.9 million in funding. Obviously, we didn't have sufficient dollars to fund all of those requests, but we did, again, make a significant dent. I think I've got one more slide. Actually, I'll come back to that at the end. Amongst the projects that are recommended for funding, and we are recommending 5 of the 7, the majority of the housing would be affordable for households that make what's called 50% of the median income. We include a chart here so you could have a reference for what those target household incomes are and then what the corresponding housing prices would be in those projects. We also noted this year we had a decent percentage of the proposed housing in family size units, either 2 and 3 bedroom units. The other key point we really like to remind our members of is that we work pretty hard to make sure when you put in $1, we can go out and bring in a lot of other dollars to match that and leverage your local investment. This year we had a pretty great success rate of $15 in other funds for every $1 of local funds. Those include both dollars coming through the Arch Trust Fund as well as another program we help City of Bellevue administer. That's a dedicated sales tax there. These sources come from the federal level, from the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. They are also leveraging private debt, and we've been excited to see increased investment from the Amazon Housing Fund, and then state and county dollars as well. So here's where I want to summarize the recommendations for you. There are some additional slides that hopefully are available to you that go through each of the individual projects, and I'm happy to answer questions about any one. But just wanted to touch at a high level on this whole slate of projects. They include projects located in City of Kenmore, the City of Bellevue, and the City of Redmond. And we have both a combination of new construction projects. 2 of the projects are preserving existing housing. One is adding affordability to an existing privately owned project. 2 of these are really significant transit-oriented development projects located on property owned by Sound Transit. So those are the ones with a higher unit count there. And I think overall just a really great slate of projects that are going to serve many needs. So a total of $6.1 million in recommended funds. And we would greatly appreciate your approval to move the contracts forward. So I'll just stop there and happy to answer any questions.
Do I have any questions for Lindsay? Anybody up here? Nope. Seeing no questions, thank you. Wow, your presentation was excellent. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay, going back to item 12.1, which is the Arch budget and work plan, which is separate from item 2. So any discussion? Anybody have any comments on 12.1? Okay, do I have it? Councilmember Charbonneau.
I assumed you were going to say, do we have a motion? Yes. Thank you. Season now. I move adoption of Resolution 2024-974 approving the 2024 Arch budget and work plan.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the floor, first and seconded, to move adoption of Resolution 2024-974 approving the Arch 2024 budget and work plan. Would you have any comments, Councilmember Charbonneau?
I'm thankful this group exists. I know Lindsay does a very good job. She's met with me one-on-one before and the Arch folks, and happy to support their budget and work plan this year.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, move to a vote. We have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-974, approving the 2024 Arch Budget and Work Plan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, show the motion has passed 7-0. Okay, moving on to item 12.2, which is the adoption of Resolution 2024-975, the Arch 2024 Housing Trust Fund allocation. Does anybody like to discuss this item? Any comments? Okay, seeing none. Do I have any motions on the floor? Deputy Mayor Lakotia.
I move adoption of Resolution 2024-975, authorizing the availability of funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund for the recommended Fall 2023 Arch Housing Trust Fund Award.
Okay, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Lakotia, seconded by Councilmember Charbonneau to move to adopt Resolution 2024-975, authorizing the availability of funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund for the recommended Fall 2023 Arch Housing Trust Fund Award. Deputy Mayor Lakotia, any comments?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Charbonneau, any comments? It's okay. So we'll move to a vote. I'll read it one more time. The resolution on the floor is to resolution to authorize the availability of funds from the city's Housing Trust Fund for the recommended Fall 2023 Arch Housing Trust Fund Award. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is approved 7-0. Okay. Moving on, additional public comment. City Clerk, has anybody signed up? Nope. Director Bronze, do we have anybody online who would like to public? Okay, so seeing none, public comment is closed. Moving on to the planning calendar, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Looking towards the February 6th meeting, we plan on having our special joint meeting with the Community Activities Commission. That'll start at 6, but we were going to do photos beforehand, so we want to start at 5:30 for that meeting so that we can do new council photos, and we'll invite the Community Activities Commission to also do new photos as they have 3 new members. Also, as a part of that meeting, we'll have our 2021 slate of international building codes presentation. The way that we'll work that is that we'll have the presentation and discussion at the February 6th meeting, and then based on that discussion, we'll bring the ordinance back at the following meeting on the 20th. And then we recently had a hearing examiner public hearing for the Toole subdivision. Assuming that the hearing examiner gets us his recommendation in time, we should have that for the February 6th meeting as well. That's all I got.
Any questions for the City Manager? Councilmember Sherlock?
Oh.
Thanks. Sorry, I just wanted to confirm the Toole development you just spoke to. That I wanted to actually ask the city attorney, is that a quasi-judicial? I'm always confused on when that happens, and I just want to make sure we have new council members. I want to make sure they're prepared.
Sure. So anytime the council is asked or required to vote on a land use application, that is a quasi-judicial act. So you sit in your quasi-judicial seats, not your legislative seats, or rather with your quasi-judicial hats on, not your legislative hats on. Generally speaking, that means you can't have any ex parte communications with the developers or any of the public on the topic. You review only the application as presented to you, and then apply the city's code to that application and determine whether or not it passes. That's essentially the process.
Thank you. And I would encourage new council members to get more information because for me, it's still confusing, I'll just admit. So, So, City Attorney Chambers, I received an email from a resident. I don't know if everybody else did, and so what do I do?
Absolutely. So any communications that you receive from anybody related to a development project should be forwarded to the city clerk, and then they can be made a part of the record, and that is no longer an ex parte communication. If at any time you do have, you go to the grocery store, there's, residents are in the grocery store, kids' sports games, however it occurs, you live your lives. You can't stop people from telling you things. But if somebody does come up to you and discuss their feelings, pro or con, for the development, before the hearing, on the day of the hearing, there'll be an opportunity for all council members individually to disclose any ex parte communications that they did have, and then that will also put those communications on the record and would cure any impropriety in having an ex parte communication. And ex parte is just, I don't even know, it's probably Latin, for having a communication with somebody that does not have everybody in the room, right? So, for example, in law, if I'm having a lawsuit, I can't go into the judge's chambers and talk about the case, just me and the judge, right? The other side gets an opportunity to be there too. And so after the ex parte communications were disclosed in the meeting, the applicant would have an opportunity to have a say on those topics as well, and that would, cure the ex parte communication. So that's really the name of the game, is openness and fairness. And then again, you are sitting, it's called quasi-judicial because you're not making policy decisions, you're voting on the existence of whether or not the application as presented passes the code as it exists. So more judge-like than legislator-like.
And one more quick question. So I received an email from a resident. I haven't responded yet. So I should respond by saying, I'm sorry, but I cannot respond, and CC the city clerk. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's an appropriate way to handle it. I think it's fair to the resident to know that, that this will come before the council in a quasi-judicial manner, and the rules do not allow for you to have ex parte communications on this. And thank you, thank you. I'm forwarding this to the city clerk, and it'll become a part of the record.
Councilmember Burford?
So I have received a few emails from the residents. Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question. I only replied to one resident, but I said similar what you said. I said I will forward to the council and let you know, and we will follow up later.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that the city clerk gets any of the communications so they can go into the record. And then just become a part of the record. And if anybody would like to talk more offline with me on this, I'm more than happy to try to explain it more. It is somewhat confusing, the whole process. I guess I will, while I'm on the topic, I'll give you a little more flavor on the ex parte communication fairness. There's something called the appearance of fairness doctrine that overlays all quasi-judicial hearings. And not only does it have to appear that there's a fair process, but it also must appear that all the decision makers don't have a stake in the fight, and that you come into it with a clean slate and fairly. And so that's why this all has to happen. Is fairness.
Councilmember Tallman?
Just for full disclosure and public record, I have received these communications as well. So I'll be following the same process.
Thank you, Councilmember.
So City Attorney, just want to clarify that just a slight bit. If this communication sort of blackout, so to speak, is from the time of the hearing exam until we vote on it. So prior to the hearing examiner holding a hearing exam, this really is not applicable, essentially, right? I mean, because it's not been even looked at or judged, correct?
So I think that it's from time of application, right? Because that's when the city then has the application in hand. But prior to that, there is nothing there's no document that is ever going to be reviewed by council yet. Does that make sense? But once the application has been filed, then that's the triggering event.
Any other questions or comments?
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I
go
did
ahead.
just want to mention on the tool, we've already had our hearing, and so the record is actually closed. So when you respond, please do let people know that you're forwarding to the city clerk, but we can no longer take it into consideration.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we will adjourn the meeting, 7:35. Thank you.